Welcome back to a special episode of the ABC Music Talk podcast. In this episode, I speak to my new colleague as he describes how he took a piece of software that he'd built for himself to being valuable enough to one of the leading brands in the global music market to acquire. Normally at this point, I'd run a quick advert for Rotor Videos, but for this episode, I'd like to alert my listeners to an opportunity to try out Beatport's streaming service. If you've ever fancied trying your hand at DJing, but haven't invested in a catalogue of music or the kit to play a set with, then Beatport has the answer. Head to beatport.com and click the DJ app link to start your free trial of their new online DJ mixer. All you need is a computer, internet connection, and a love of dance music. Link in the show notes. Welcome to the show, Keith McDonnell, co-founder of ampsuite.
Hey, how you doing?
Thanks for coming down to the Beatport London HQ to do this in person. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. It's nice to get down to London every now and again.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk about your co-founder, Neil Walden, in a little bit. But first, can you give us the elevator pitch to what ampsuite is, or at least is at the point with which you sold it to Beatport?
Sure, yeah. So ampsuite is a fully integrated suite of tools for record labels to run their business, essentially. Everything from signing the initial contract with the artists all the way through to distribution, promotion and royalty accounting, with many other bits along the way.
Bits and pieces, and we'll perhaps get into some of that a little bit later on.
Sure.
Okay, so your co-founder. So there's a story here, isn't there? Because when we first got sort of sat down and did our kind of day one, like what are we going to do together as ampsuite and Beatport, there was a story at the end where you described how you'd met Neil, and then he was like, actually, there's an alternate version.
There's another angle.
So what was your version of it?
So I guess the two versions are kind of aligned. There was just a little bit that I didn't know about. So I managed a group of record labels for friends and associates at the time, and I used to do everything manually, uploading to all of the stores, sending out promos, royalty accounting, etc. So I just thought there's got to be a better way to do this. And I spec'd out essentially what was the early version of ampsuite and advertised it for a developer to write, because I don't write code, I do music, and I put it up on a find a freelancer style website, had a number of quotes in, or inquiries in, and one of them was from Neil, who had just finished his course in computer coding, or whatever.
I'm sure it had a different name, but we'll go with computer coding.
Computer science, I think it was.
Right.
And he just finished his course at Warwick University, which is just up the road from me. He lived in Nottingham, which is just up the road from me. And his price seemed reasonable. So we started this journey from day one.
What was his alternate version?
What I didn't know was that when he was pitching for the job at that time, that he'd just been made redundant. So he was actually desperate to make sure that he secured this job.
Which I just like, the fact that story came out like post acquisition was just such a lovely moment for me.
It was meant to be. It was aligned in the stars.
Yeah. So, but definitely a shout out to Neil. I mean, he's the technical brains behind ampsuite.
He is a technical wizard. Yeah,
absolutely. Actually, so he's in Nottingham. You're in Coventry. I mean, how often would you actually meet up in person?
Not very often at all. I mean, it's not that far. It's probably about an hour or so away. But with modern technology, everything can just be done remotely. And we worked so well for many years in that way. We met up a couple of times at the start. We met up once or twice in between. But really, for the majority of years that the business ran, we didn't. We did everything remotely: email, phone, Skype calls, etc.
Yeah, which sort of sounds crazy back then, but of course now people are like, of course you did everything over Zoom or whatever, right?
yeah. I mean, back at the start, I'll be honest with you, quite a few people did used to say to me, "What, you don't go and work with this guy? You don't meet up regularly?" And no, especially as well because things were really fluid and it just happened, and we just got on with the job really. So
Yeah.
we didn't really have too much time for meeting up.
Yeah, no, it's just so interesting. Okay, all right. So, but where did this all begin for you? So you just described that you sort of had this need and you kind of specced out this piece of technology, but it doesn't begin with technology with you, right?
No.
So where did your love of dance music come from?
So back in the I hate to say this now, but the 80s, the 90s. I've always been into music since I was a young kid at school. I was in a marching band and I played the trumpet, and I got up on stage when I was 5 or 6 and played the plastic guitar and plastic drums with my uncle who was in a band. So I've always been musically inclined. But I did an engineering apprenticeship when I left school, which I hated, but I did it to get something behind me, as the parents used to say back then.
That's right. When we met up, it was on the site of the old car factory where you did your apprenticeship.
That's right. The site where we met and where I met Neil for the first time when we were starting ampsuite.
Hallowed ground indeed.
Yeah, so it was. That's where I did my engineering apprenticeship. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. And so, and I know that you have been at one point in your time a globe-trotting DJ. Was that kind of your first sort of manifestation of taking dance music into something a bit more kind of like a lean-in hobby? Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, I started a label with some DJs at the time.
But did the DJ come before the idea of starting a label, or was it?
Long time before. Yeah, I used to DJ just locally at bars, few clubs. I used to go to a lot of clubs. Fell in love with it and just thought that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Used to go to these underground parties and the DJs were like gods type of thing. And I was just amazed with it. It was a total change. From going to the clubs that we used to go to before we went to those clubs. So I was just awestruck by it, and that's what I wanted to do. So any opportunity I could get to DJ, house parties, bars, bar mitzvahs.
It's just available for hire.
I was available for hire for free.
Very good. Okay, so you were doing sort of like more of the local stuff, and was that when you thought, okay, time to professionalise, and you started the label, or did you get some bigger gigs first?
Yeah, no. I was just doing it for a love of it. You know, we used to do it down the local wine bar on a Sunday night, and people used to come in after they'd been out to proper clubs on Friday and Saturday, and they were still hankering after some dance music. So on a Sunday night, we started it in a local wine bar. And that became our sort of residency, let's say. I got to know sort of more people in the scene around Coventry then. Got to know these DJs, Parks and Wilson at the time.
Parks and Wilson, legends.
Who were residents at a club in London called Home. That led to starting the label, and then that's when it then became, okay, I'm going to give up my job. I was in quite a well-paid job for a large electrical engineering company at the time, and I just said to my wife, look, this is what I want to do. I'm going to start from earning nothing, but I can't really do it and that. So I just gave in my notice and moved into music.
Okay, and so what was the first thing you did then? Is that when you set up the label?
Set up the label, yeah. Okay. That was
and what was the name of the label?
Baroque.
Yes, indeed. I used to buy your records. They were excellent. Always excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, so you set up the label. So you said something earlier where you got some other people together, or?
Yeah, so I used to manage a group of labels for other people as well. So the Baroque started first, and then we started managing some other labels. There was another label management company called 3 Beat in Liverpool.
That's right.
And they used to manage some labels. I started a company called Critical Rhythm, which used to manage labels as well, and we had this sort of thing where we distributed them, promoted them, etc.
And I guess this was sort of back in the physical days.
Yeah, exactly. So I used to do this out of my mum's garage, which my dad kindly converted into half office, half vinyl storage.
Yeah. I was going to say, because those unsold records suddenly like ramp up.
Oh, don't. I mean, when it all ended and we realised that, we had tens of thousands of vinyl that at that point we thought we were never going to shift. I mean, hey, maybe now we would be shifting them with the
yeah, of course, at like nice high prices.
Yeah, but we ended up having to, it still kills me to think of this, but we hired a skip and we put tens of thousands of vinyl into this skip and waved it goodbye down the road.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting hearing your story because, of course, I have a very similar everything from like the marching band trumpet playing, by the way,
really?
in my head.
Really?
Yeah, and then of course Lee Morrison and I had the Alex Lee label or company managing other labels, and what you've just said there, I have a vivid memory of Lee and I just dumping records into these great big bins when we moved office ones. Yeah, it was a weird old time. Yeah. Okay, but so we've been talking about this sort of period of time where you're managing these labels. It's mostly physical focused. When did digital first come into your world? Do you remember like some of the companies and things that sort of really pushed you down that route?
Yeah, I mean, Beatport was probably the first, one of the first, if not the first conversations that we had. I think it was a young lady called Liz at the time.
Yeah, Liz Miller. She's over at Facebook now.
Yeah, she got in touch with us and said, hey, I know you've got a group of labels there. And I think at the time our supplier account for Beatport was like number 72 or something like that. So we were one of the first ones in there. And at the time, I'll be honest with you, because vinyl was still such a massive part, if not near enough all of our revenue, I kind of thought, wow, I don't know, it's probably not going to do anything, but we'll strike up a relationship early with them. And hey, look what's happened. Yeah,
well, indeed. And so that came along. There were obviously others, and you now get to work with Linda Phoenix, who was at Express Beats, which was another one that was around that time. And so I guess certainly my experience, and presumably similar to yours, was more and more of these started to come about. And was it just that sheer sort of, I don't really know what to do with all of this, so I'm going to build a system, or what happened? What were the processes?
Yeah, so more of them started to come around. The sort of work on that side of things started to become more, because you had to upload into each individual system separately. The royalty reports that were coming back were getting bigger and bigger. I mean, nothing like they are now.
Well, because this was just downloads, really.
This was just downloads, but still, it took some logistics to work out. So, and we were doing promos as well then, so we were using various promo companies. Some that labels came to us had adopted, and we just took over the sort of management of. We were then picking a promo company and sort of putting new labels through them. So the legwork, so to speak, of uploading this data into multiple systems, download, promo, newsletter systems, and then royalty accounting, sitting there with spreadsheets every month, it just became too much.
Yeah. But you did you build the system first? Because I know that you and I obviously crossed paths when I was at Ingrooves with Rob, who's obviously now CEO of Beatport. Did you start to build out a direct relationship with Beatport outside of the Ingrooves platform, or did you think, I'd go with a distribution company first of all?
Yeah, no. So I had the direct relationship with Beatport, as I say, in the very early days with my own label and the label group that I was managing at the time. So that relationship came first, as it did with a few of the other dance indies. But then we were doing distribution to all of the other stores, because we could get a deal with Apple or Spotify when that came along.
Sure.
We started off with various other distributors, The Orchard, Ingrooves. We were uploading into their system as well as the dance indie systems. Yeah,
sure. And then I guess eventually that the control that you needed to look after your clients kind of kicked in, and you were like, right, okay, we need to do a little bit more. We need to do all this stuff direct, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That as a business, from a business point of view, that's what we looked at. And then from a logistics point of view of managing it all, that's when I started to think, hey, there's got to be a better, easier way to do this, and we can automate a lot of this.
Yeah, and one of the things I think sometimes people don't necessarily know about ampsuite is that it is much more than just distribution. I mean, that's more or less what you and I have just talked about, because it was the kind of the first time that people needed to think digitally, so to speak. And so when did the other tools that you've got in the platform come about? Like, was there a sort of a lot of them that came along quite early, or did they just creep in over the period? Because how long has the company been going? Is it?
So ampsuite as a company was started in the beginning of 2012.
Right.
So we're in our 10th year.
Yeah.
The software that ampsuite is and was based on was a few years before that, because it started from this management company the way I was running other people's labels.
Sure.
So the early stages of ampsuite originated earlier, but ampsuite as a company was 2012.
And so things like the DJ tool, the DJ promo tool, was that quite an early feature, or did that come
very early, the first?
Right.
Yeah, because at the time, the three main things that we wanted to solve was aggregating all of this product between various points that we were having to do manually, and save some money on the DJ promo tool, because we were using half a dozen different DJ promo tools, and they were charging us per promo.
Oh wow.
And so you can imagine we were paying a lot of money out to these promo pool companies, and I just thought, the money that we've spent in the last 6 months, I'm sure I could have paid someone to write me my own system.
Yeah.
And that's
right. Okay. Very good. Okay. So that was obviously quite an important piece of it. And things like mailing list management and that type of thing. Did that come later, or again was that quite an early?
That was reasonably early, because I was again using MailChimp and things like that to send out newsletters of all of these records that we were releasing to fan bases that the labels had built and that we were building. So again, it was the cost of doing that, but also the manual process of pulling all of that data and re-entering it all into this newsletter system and promo systems, etc.
Yeah, it just took a while, huh? I guess we'll perhaps cover some of the other features of the system later on, but I'm really curious. I mean, you've run a really lean business, right? No candy wall, no sort of ball pool pit, like indoor slide. What do you make of kind of that new breed of so-called startup that has all this kind of big VC money, and like you just bootstrap your way through the whole thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, we had, it was one of the discussions we had early on, do we go out there and do this ourselves? Do we go and try and get funding, etc.? And our philosophy was always that we want to do this ourselves. We don't want to get into debt. We don't want to have that sort of pressure, other than the pressure we put on ourselves. And we don't want to play with someone else's money. We want to do this ourselves and know that we've built this ourselves. And like I say, be fully in control of our destiny.
So it was a very conscious decision.
It was a conscious
to do that.
decision.
Okay, very good.
100%.
Yeah.
And that was all the way through, right until the point of acquisition.
Which of course makes things easier, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, we sort of, in our heads, we had the option then of we could even have gone out and got funding then to take us to the next level. But we felt by that time we'd served our time doing it on our own,
Well, talking about serving your time, I mean, this is, as we just discussed, a lean business that you run. I think some of the other members of the family have got involved over time, your wife and son, which is amazing. It's excellent. I sort of love that sort of cottage industry element to it. But I mean, certainly things like holidays, that must have been like a really difficult thing to break away from if you've got this kind of ongoing release cycle.
Oh, for sure. I mean, for the last 10 years, it wasn't that we didn't have a holiday, but when we had a holiday, I would take my laptop away and I'd get up early and work down by the pool, saving the pool chairs while everyone was still in bed, and then they'd come down and my wife would say, right, get off that laptop. And I'd go, yeah, no problem. I'd get off it for an hour, and then when she'd got in the pool, I'd pull the laptop out again and make sure. So that's what we did. It was working holidays. That's how
it's the side of the sort of the glamour of being an entrepreneur that I think never gets surfaced.
Yeah.
Certainly not in the movies so much. But I mean, and all credit to you really for sort of sticking it out for these last 10 years or so. I mean, that's a hell of a thing. And so what was so given the history that you've just given us, sort of DJ, record label owner, building up this sort of network of other labels that you managed to then sort of really scaling the business using technology, which is a wonderful kind of like map on the way through. But my guess is that you've not gone through the sale process of a business before.
No, not really. No. And that was new. It was a little bit of a shock to the system. We were thinking, hey, somebody's interested in the business. Next week we'll have sold the business and we'll be moved on and
put your feet up
working for them. Wow, I wish. Yeah. But that's part of the business world which we didn't know about. So I knew about music and I knew about building what I wanted to build. Neil is the genius that he is behind the keyboard. And building the actual software itself. The business side of it is probably something where we were lacking a little bit, and that's where hopefully the acquisition by Beatport will take it to the next level.
Yeah, for sure. And so what did you like? What was your process to approaching the sale? I mean, was it just a kind of you don't really know what you're doing, you just sent out a few kind of emails to inquire, or like did you have a plan, or like what was, just talk us through that?
Yeah, so myself and Neil had a chat and we'd said, certainly over the last couple of years, the first few years we were beating the drum, trying to tell everyone about how much time we could save them, how easier we could make it for running their record labels. They wouldn't have to get cold sweats in the nights 2 months before they had to send their royalty statements out. So those first few years were spent doing that. Then we had a period of sort of reasonable growth, but over the last few years, the period of growth through word of mouth about ampsuite and in general labels just realising, hey, we need to get professional to remain in the industry, meant that the business had just grown to a stage where we felt to take it to the next level and compete with the big boys, so to speak, we would either need to go out and get that investment and grow the team rapidly because we were at our maximum output, or look to sell. And it just so happened I'd spoken to Rob at Beatport about something else recently,
right? Okay.
And I just reached out to him for some advice. I knew his involvement with Ingrooves. I knew what he'd done there. I felt like we had a good rapport when we spoke, and so I just reached out with him some just general advice, really.
Yeah. Very good. And it's obviously
it led to this.
Yeah, it led to this exactly. And so I did have a question as to like why Beatport, like why is that the home? But I mean, I guess you've just kind of answered that. It was just more of a natural process, and you're obviously so familiar with the company that it just felt like actually, trusted brand. Like this is a good place to kind of see the legacy carry on. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, we didn't know that Beatport would be interested in the acquisition at that time. It was more the fact that Rob had been the owner of Ingrooves, started Ingrooves, exited the business. Very similar, obviously much bigger scale than ampsuite. So it was just more advice than anything, even on down to sort of what it might be worth.
Yeah, sure.
But there must have been something there that sort of clicked his side as well, and it was just the stars aligned again.
It's one of the things that I think people probably don't realise about the company, where they've gone and bought Plug-in Boutique and Luke Masters, and and there's that sort of that wider scope of what the business is doing, and so he was obviously seeing that as something to fill out. Yeah. Very good. Would you have done anything different?
I'll be honest with you, probably what I would have done is released a bit of control a little bit earlier, probably gone out, and because the company was doing well, we could have gone and taken some external help in a little bit quicker. We had the resources to do so. But yeah, I am a little bit of a control freak, and I like to make sure everything's done properly and everything's done that day, and yeah, I probably could have let a bit of that go a little bit sooner, and maybe had a holiday with that laptop.
Yeah, right. Okay, so what you probably would have done is brought into some outside finance and some maybe a strategic partner, or
no, even just down to the fact of just employing an extra person or two to take some of the workload off. But because for the first few years we were beating that drum, and maybe the revenue wasn't there, we learned to live a little bit more frugally. So then when the business was doing well, in the back of my mind, and I can't speak for Neil here, but I was always of a mind of, right, let's build up,
just maximise what we're
the reserves, and because you never know, is this business still going to be doing good today as it is tomorrow, etc. And in reality, the business was doing really great, and we had the resources to get a person or two extra in to help with the workload. But as I say, I can be a bit of a control freak sometimes.
That's all good. Okay, so you're still with the business at the moment. You're helping us, work out everything that's gone on with the company, and you've seen a little bit inside the machine that is Beatport. What sort of hopes do you have for ampsuite now it's part of a bigger entity?
Yeah. So seeing the inner workings of a bigger company, it's both very different and very similar. Similar in the ways that the people work here are passionate, like I'm passionate about the business. Different in the ways that it's a bigger corporation and everyone doesn't have to take on every task, I hope to see it grow to the size of Beatport now. I mean, if we can keep on growing, keep on working with bigger resources, great labels, then that's my hope.
Yeah, very good. Okay, and so what's next for you? Like, what are you going to go on and do?
Well, at the minute, I'm still here doing my thing. I mean, me and Neil said early on, it doesn't really feel very different, does it?
Oh, come on now, we've got you some help.
Yeah, no. In terms of the help, you've been amazing, and as I say, that is something that we should have done earlier, probably.
Yeah.
But in terms of, we're still here, we're still working for ampsuite, we still love it, we still feel like this is our baby to a degree. It isn't anymore, it's owned by Beatport, but we're still loving doing I'm still loving doing what I'm doing. I still wake up in the morning and don't dread going to work, and that's a good thing.
That's a win in itself, for sure.
It is, yeah.
Okay, so now it's actually at a company that's got some more resources. Again, the sort of thing that you identified you probably should have done, but of course it's easier when it's already there. Is there any particular, feature of the platform or a service that you'd like to see happen, like quite early on, like where you're still involved?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we did want to add for a while was the demo submission thing, which you guys have sewn up now
with
perfectly. But I'll be honest with you, that was one of the things. It was quite near the top of our development wish list, because it would have completed the sort of jigsaw, so to speak.
Yeah. So
it's great to see that obviously you guys think alike as well.
Yeah, no, very, very, very good to hear that. That means we've made another good acquisition.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the metrics side of it, the analytics side of it is something that we're always looking to improve. Because you can put a record out there and you can get your royalty statements back and pay the artist, but if you can start to look into that data and see how it's doing, how you can make it better. So we've got analytics in the system at the minute, but we were constantly looking to improve that side of it as well.
Yeah, because you've got other marketing tools within the platform, like the sort of the smart links. Again, it's one of those things that you could. There's many third-party companies that do these, but again, all of this is built into the platform, and all of those represent an opportunity to get in front of the fan, effectively.
Yeah.
I guess it's interesting to sort of think about how, if you can get past that analytics idea of where it's really just data reporting, but get that into more of a sort of an insights-based platform, which you can then use the tools that are actually in the platform to then go and do more and connect with more fans.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that fan connection side, I guess, is another point or another part of the system that could be expanded on. For sure.
Very good. Well, I hope that we get to do some of these things together in the time that you'll decide to stick around with us. I hope you do for a long period of time. So thank you very much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
No problem at all. It's been great. Thanks a lot, Alex.
Yeah, excellent. So to my listeners, thank you for listening. I welcome all feedback, comments and suggestions for future shows. My Twitter and Instagram handles are at Alex Branson, or head to the website where you'll find a contacts page. Also a shout out to the incredible audio assassins who provided the music branding for the show. And if you like the show, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.